Aloha. I'm Greg Markham, 2015 HSBA President. We at the HSBA are very excited about our three-digit project. It's a project where we have interviewed our three-digit lawyers, those lawyers that successfully completed the bar exam and were given three-digit bar numbers during the territorial era all the way up until 1970. While we wish we could have interviewed all of them, we've only had a chance to interview about 60. We have gratitude towards all of them because they created the unique and affable legal environment in which we now all practice. All of the interviews are available at the HSBA website, and you'll be able to watch them at your leisure. Thank you.
I was in Kahuku in the bivouac, and they were shooting live stuff, and I was in this foxhole. And I called Leota Crone, who was then the clerk of the court, and said, Leota, you got to get me out of here. Tell the colonel I have to be there for swearing in.
When I came back in 1959 from Harvard Law School, I made inquiry at one of the firms and was told that they would love to have a Harvard lawyer, but they didn't think their clients would understand having to deal with an Asian. Each of us achieved 60 years of age. A cartoon or caricature picture was made up for each one of us.
The profession has moved from a profession to a business. And we're more a business now than we are a profession. And the question I say is, where was the tipping point? And what was the tipping point in that transformation?
I did not intend to stay with Smith Wild, but I went to work there in December of 1957 at the awesome pay of $350 a month. I was paid more than that in the Army. And there were 8 in the firm, 7 partners and 1 associate. I was the associate.
Not necessarily proudly, but we were still Howley firms. And it took a little while before all of a sudden we all realized we were losing good lawyers. And so we hired a young guy, great guy, Jerry Sakia, as our break into the non-Howley group.
All of my classmates and I knew we would be at war with Germany. I knew something more. I thought we'd be at war with Japan. And so we all applied for commissions. My eyesight was slightly nearsighted. I couldn't get into an officer training school. And so I said, I don't want to be drafted and peel potatoes. So I came back here to Oahu, got a job with the Army Corps of Engineers. And I was one of the ones that ousted Punahou School and closed it down on December 7th.
In Chinatown, there were shingles up, so-and-so, and it said attorney and counselor at law. And I thought about it, and we don't do any more counseling.
My boss told me, can you go in and plead my client guilty? I had no idea. I thought I was just going in and saying not guilty. Well, the prosecutor would this is an arraignment. Okay. And then the defense attorney would say certain things. So I'm in the back of the room writing everything down because it was trial by fire.
The judges seemed a lot older. A lot of them were either former legislators who had lost. They weren't hesitant about admonishing us, about scolding us.
You know, I think it's important for all lawyers to read about the heroes of the law.
People like Jay are going to be the ones, and you are going to be the ones who take us into the future, who help us communicate with each other.
Your word is gold. You know, once you break that, then there's a problem.
The biggest change that I've seen has been the emergence of the women.
Were there any other women in your class?
Well, there was one other, and she was going to quit until I showed up.
And he gave us a little lecture, and he said, as we got up to leave, I want to tell you one thing, you better never forget this. This is the first place people are going to meet the judiciary and what justice is. And I want to be sure when they leave, win, lose, or draw, they say I got a fair shake and I was treated with respect.
When I would go to a national conference at the National Council of Juvenile Family Court Judges or one of the other organizations, everybody said, "You're so lucky. You come from Hawaii. You have this wonderful family court." And people in other states who were trying to create family courts would come here to study.
If you show respect to the court and to all other lawyers, you'll get it back in spades. And we need to go back to that time.
We knew everybody, and you more or less you trust everybody. If one guy we know, and he'll come back again. But hey, when you have an extension, say, "Hey, can you give me one?" Say, "Okay, okay." Nobody, you know, people used to cooperate, and it was very, very nice.
You have to take not only the majesty of the law, which is what got me into law in the first place, but you do have to, if you're going to practice, you do have to have a very, very excellent sense of and patience with details.
During that period, I was waiting until I get my certificate, and I came back to Hilo, and I was working for Martin Pence and John Ushijima, and at that time, I think they paid me $200 a month. Now, after I passed the bar, I got a big jump into $350.
Hawaii had the lowest number of lawyers per capita of any state in the United States, so they were desperate for lawyers here, and they were trying to recruit lawyers off the mainland, and that was why Frank came to Stanford and interviewed, and he offered me a job.
I can remember when I first had a complaint to do. I didn't know who signed it. I seriously did not. I had the client sign the complaint because I didn't know I was supposed to sign it.
Those who came back from World War II and from the experience of having been rejected because of their racial background, their color, their heritage, embraced the Warren Court's decisions. And that meant a great deal to the development of individual rights law in Hawaii.
I thought that the lawyers that we acquired were very good lawyers, and everybody got along. And I think that was one of the main reasons why that firm stuck together.
Herb Shibabukuro became a judge. Then I joined, and then Ron Moon joined, and he became the Chief Justice, which makes me wonder what happened to Ron and I. How come we didn't get the judgeship? Ron never went home, I think, because I would start it with him. He gave me 60 cases to go through interrogatories and everything, and I'd be working at it. And I keep checking in his office. It was 6 o'clock at night. He don't go home, and I was afraid to go home before Ron.
Ron Lipkerman says, you have to go down and take this case. I've got something else, and you have to object to the motion and argue it. So no tie, no coat. I know what the judge is going to do to me, right? So I stand on the other side of the bar as if that's going to help. Art Fong says, Moon, what's the problem here? You know what the rule is in our courtroom. Tie, coat. I said, you know, Judge, I'd like to explain. He said, no explanation. You are found in contempt of court. You buy a box of pastries for my girls tomorrow.
Try a case today, it's much more expensive than the past. So the insurance carriers whom we typically work with, they appoint us to represent the insureds. They look at the balance, the risk factors and the cost factors, and if they can pay monies to close out a case, they would prefer doing that.
The lawyer has to be a nice person to get along with the judge, the jury, and your opponent.
The training that you get and the education that you get going to law school is perfect for the financial industry. I had seen the attorneys, our friends, working very long hours. And, you know, working for a financial institution, 8 to 5, Monday through Friday.
As a member of the American College of Trial Lawyers, there was a big solicitation of members to volunteer to represent the prisoners down in Guantanamo. And that's how I got involved. There was a flavor about Guantanamo that was quite intriguing.
Gradually, I found myself more and more involved in this ThinkTech, and I found that it was gratifying to me. And although it wasn't paying any money, I've never taken any salary out of it. It gave me a lot of gratification.
My chief assignment, as far as I was concerned, was to make a ruling. Because if I don't rule, the case does not proceed. The judge's primary decision as a motion judge is to rule on the matter. Let them, if I'm wrong, there's an avenue of appeal, and that can be taken at a later date.
In 1957, I returned home for the summer, and I worked in the summer for American Factors, one of the big 5 companies. And in there was, one of their subsidiaries was Fireman's Fund Insurance Company, and I worked at Fireman's Fund for the summer, and I enjoyed it. It was an adversarial position, and I loved it. I went to 4 insurance companies, 4 other insurance companies, turned down. It really upset me, and if I can use the word, I was really pissed. And I said, if they don't want me, I'm going on the other side, and I'll take them on. And for the rest of my career, all I did was plaintiffs, personal injury case. Best decision I ever made.
Well, speaking with Bert and Russell, they both looked at me and says, Alfred, how much do you need in order to keep you going while you're getting ready for the bar examination? And I said, well, I think maybe if I can have, I can do it on $200 a month. And I looked at them, and they both looked at me, and they whispered to each other. And finally, Bert says, Alfred, can you do it on $100 a month? I said, I'll take anything.
If you wanted to affect change, there was at least one rational, orderly way to do it, and that would be through the law. One thing that affected me was the idea that you know, civil rights were important. Be competent, have integrity, and be respectful. And I think the courts appreciate that.
Lawyers were more formal. We wore suits, ties regularly.
Yes.
And there wasn't even an Aloha Friday. The judges were very informal, but that all switched. And the air conditioning in the courthouse became more dependable than it was. They used to have the dog day rule where you did not have to go to trial in August.
When it came to dealing lawyers face to face, if we talk and one fellow said, I will do it, I didn't need anything in writing. I could rely on the fact that it will be done. And when it wasn't, it was a rare exception. The practice of law, when you finally get down to it, has a lot of stress. And if you don't have a sense of humor about it, if you can find an open window, you jump out of it. Because the stress on you is just that heavy.
My first day when I went to legal aid, I was supposed to be learning the ropes and everything, but they were short of somebody, so they brought a prostitute in, and she had to show up in district court. So I got all the information, everything, and we went out, and I realized I didn't know where district court was. Can you imagine how much confidence she had when her attorney says, oh, by the way, do you know where the courthouse is?
Today, lawyers have to be on their toes and be careful what you say and what you do. You cannot rely on the word of your adversary. We used to have our annual bar party, not convention, a bar party, picnic.
Yeah.
And you gotta see the judges going and they throwing dice, and you know, we're all together.
Being a lawyer is something that you apply to things you do throughout your life.
It's how you approach probably your problems at home. That you do any kind of business, you apply the principles that you learned as a lawyer.
We were chasing the retreating Germans when the VE Day happened. After that, we gathered up the German soldiers and took them to a prisoner of war camp.
After the war started, I and a bunch of Japanese American students from the university volunteered and formed the Varsity Victory Volunteers. And we worked at Schofield Barracks.
I've been practicing law for 61 years or so. In fact, I still have my license. I was basically a solo practitioner for all of those 61 years.
No, I'm not good at sports. For instance, in our neighborhood baseball team, I was always placed in the right field where no balls came around.
Governor Burns, and he asked me, why do you want to be a judge? And I mentioned to him, I said, I've made a career decision, and it's going to be a commitment. If you're looking for Native Hawaiians, I'm it.
Another thing we did in district court was try to get the translators registered and knowledgeable, not only in the language, but also, in their discussions with the witnesses, because they'd be up on the witness stand, the witness would be there, and the interpreter would be listening to the guy talk for about 5 minutes, and he asked the interpreter, okay, what did the guy say? He said no.
Someone asked me, do you want to give a 5-year commitment and go into a judge advocate corps office, and you may avoid Vietnam? I chose Vietnam. I wanted to get back here and practice.
There was no homelessness back then. If somebody, lost their parents or someone got sick, you come and stay with Auntie.
To become a judge, you're going to find out whether it's a federal judge, a state judge, or if you're being a judge on the mainland, politics is involved. But once you get on the bench, you leave the politics aside.
I think we recognized that we were professionals, we were advocates for our clients' cause, but it wasn't a personal battle. And now in my mediation work, I do see some personal battles that kind of get in the way of resolving clients' cases.
It's frankly amazing when I think how primitive we were when we first started practice. We lived and died with IBM typewriters, whiteout, and carbon paper. And then it evolved to mag cards.
Talking to the dean, I wasn't in trouble, I was just talking to him. I said, what's the incoming class look like? And he said, oh, the SATs are better and the GPAs are better, and they're about 1/3 women and 2/3 men. I said, 1/3 women? And he said, are more women applying? And he said, no, they don't draft women.
As Wally used to say, if you're a good lawyer, the money will come to you. But if you make money your goal, you're going to cut corners and get into trouble. And as a correlate, he'd also say, if you want to make big money, go into real estate or something, that the law wasn't set up for that.
One of the things he was against was hiring any more howlies, but Dave was an exception, as was John Thomas. But we went after Wayne Kikina. Yes. Very, very soon, within 2 years after we started. Wayne was a target of ours. He was with the Lipcomb firm.
Also doing defense work.
And so we ended up picking him up as an associate along with Evelyn Lance, who was one of the first. She was the first lady graduate from Columbia Law School.
Federal court is very techy. You can do depots right from the courtroom. You can do witnesses from the courtroom. But in essence, it's still important, I think, in front of the jury to have it live.
As a lawyer, you have one asset, and that's your reputation. And that is something that you need to
build and keep and preserve. And once your reputation is tarnished or lost, it is almost impossible to get it back. Although we have 3-digit attorney numbers, that does not equate with 3-digit ages, regardless of what we look like.
You want to be a good lawyer? Learn your craft. Don't start out on your own. Go with a good firm. Get education for 3, 4, 5 years. In a small community, when people need help, they go to you because they know you're going to go to the mat for them. They don't go to you because you're nice or that you're popular.
Satisfy yourself that you're doing the right thing, that you're helping other people. And if you have that in mind, you'll, at the end of the day, be more happy than you would be if you're just worried about how much you build.
Especially in a small community, it's very important that a lawyer keep your eye on being a healer. Make things better, not exacerbate the problems that the people have. And so be a healer and don't lose your sense of humanity by getting too lost in the law.
We could just pick up the phone and I could call Walton, or Walton could call Morris, and we could work things out. We didn't have to put it in writing.
I moved to Kauai to get out of the rat race, but the rats caught up and passed me on the fly.
As a prosecutor, you make your recommendations and it's kind of frustrating when the court doesn't follow your recommendations. So I thought, well, if I become a judge, I can do my thing.
If you pound too many nails in a coffin, the corpse will wake up. Idea being, if you got enough to prove your case, enough, stop and let it go.
Be humble. They need to be nice and respectful to their co-workers as well as staff. You be nice to your staff will take care of you. They'll cover for you.
Neighbor island practice is different. I don't know how it is in Honolulu, but I make house calls. I make hospital calls.
Yeah.
To do an acquisition, the businessmen have to teach you their business. As you're being taught, you're still getting paid.
My rule was, if a case, had merit, it should be settled.
The Castle and Cook building, when it was dismantled, they allowed scavengers, including myself, to go into the building, and they had oak paneling everywhere. They were pulling it apart, and if you could take it home, and actually I took a lot of it home.
The exam was given at the Supreme Court of Hawaii, in one of the libraries, and I remember I was sitting at one end of a desk, and this other fellow remember was sitting at the other end, and during the break, he came up to me and he said, you're writing an awful lot.
We actually went to low-income areas and provided pro bono services.
We believed, idealistically, that we could form a law firm and devote a third of our time to pro bono work.
So I had a good broad experience to kind of launch my career in business. I didn't spend a lot of time on pro bono work, but other than keeping some of my friends out of jail.
I remember having a dictating machine, carbon paper and all that stuff.
Everybody knew everybody. It was pretty hard to cross somebody earlier in the week when you knew or the week before when you knew you were going to see them Monday morning.
We had our first restaurant in St. Petersburg, Subway sandwich restaurant. It was the leading Subway sandwich restaurant in the world.
Wow.
In volume, in rubles. We were bringing rubles in by the hand cart, and we got that taken away by the Russian mob. This goes to show where you're in Hawaii, you could end up doing business in Russia, if you're foolish at least.
I ke kahi mau la, ua komo wā I ke kula nui mahilo I ka polokalama o lalo Hawaii. O ia ka mea mao no na loyo Hawaii I ke la wā.
People would say, why do you go back to Texas every year? And I said, well, I go back there to recharge my accent, because the juries like it.
In Hilo, everybody in the jury pool all speaks Pidgin English, and So you speak pidgin English, they know immediately if you're from town.
So we were doing motions in limine before Judge King. So I was up there arguing, and one of my motions in limine was to keep out any facts about my client, bad acts. And he says, Mr. Cook, you should have brought an action for separate trials to bifurcate the case. And I said, ha, Judge, I did. And it was denied. And he said, well, Mr. Cook, it looks like you've got good grounds for appeal. Your motion is denied. Anyway, that was just like Judge King. And I like a judge like that has a sense of humor.
As you know, when I was at Corp Counsel, I was sort of, my mentor was Paul Devens, and Paul's chief client was Mayor Fossey. So basically, every morning I had to read the advertiser to find out what I was going to do that day.
I've done corporate work, I've done condominium work, I've done real estate partnerships, and it's not the same. And you just have to have that knack to care about people going through this process.
One of the things that has developed in a positive direction since Jeff and I started out is the handling of animosity, which is always present in family court. People don't like each other.
Judge Pence called me into his chambers, gave me words of advice, gave me some of his Hilo strawberries. His words and his mentoring have always stayed with me.
All the motions practice, virtually all, went through Judge Fukushima. And Judge Fukushima was just merciless. I mean, he would if you had a string citation, you know, he would ask you the facts of the fourth one in line, you know, that kind of stuff. It only happened once before you were ready.
There are liars who don't do it the right way, and it doesn't make our profession look the way it should look.
Lawyers are among the three healing professions. Medicine heals the body, the religious people here that heal the soul, but we're the peacemakers in society by resolving conflict in a peaceful way.